Okay, this lesson for the Koine Project Class, just the first time to try this. Let's see if we can take this letter Aleph and build a theory for everything from the first earth to the new earth and everything in between. So let's start out here first with eternity. Of course, that's timeless. So whatever that is. And then we had instantaneity. There we go. So we had instantaneity, no time transpired, no energy was depleted. That is, the Godhead remained unchanged, the immutability of God. And then, let me see, we had timeless existence. There's no referential time as in Genesis 1:14. So we have timeless existence. There's no long because there's no point of reference. There's nothing relative about it. And then we had that judgment against Lucifer. Let's just, let's say we have first earth. And then the judgment, this point here, let's just say that's the judgment. And that would be against Lucifer. Now this has been taught for hundreds of years. That's not really what we're working on. We're working on, can we do a formula for everything? So then we have the judgment, catapulsion. Some call the Big Bang the start. It's actually the Big Crunch, the ending. And this was at 1,000 years per 1 day. Remember, this is a theory we're constructing based on one letter. How much information can we ascertain and build from this? So that's approximately 36c times speed of light. We have a new Earth over here at the end. We want to get back to new Earth. So we have one unit, one Earth, and have one here. So in inversion, for example, and I'll write that up here, but before we get there, we have this moment where we have a repaired earth. We'll go along this line here. This is where Hebrews talks about the mending of the earth, the repair of the earth. Of course, we're not debating that either. We're seeing if we can develop a theory of everything using our language, using the numeric values, and see what we can ascertain. And then, of course, we'll have the regenerated earth with that 1,000-year reign here, 1,000 years. So there we go. Now we have a good line here. We have this here. So we'll have to come back. All this will have to come back together to form this. So we have something very unusual that is in our language. So we have 1 day as 1,000 years, and then we have 1,000 years as 1 day. There we go. There. It's called Chiasmus Inversion. And you remember what we want to do with an inversion, such as 1 day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years is a day. Those are inverse. And you remember the inverse relationship between multiplication and division is that. So when we have 1 day is 1,000 years, we have a ratio of 1 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1. And simply stated, we demonstrated so simply that it's almost difficult for some to believe years at 12-hour day. 12 hours. G said there's 12 hours in a day. So we're looking for our 12 hours night. so we can have our 24 hours. Remember that, 24 hours. So we have the 1 day to 1,000 years, that ratio. So we got days and years, so that's our superordinate category, days and years. So we multiplied this times 360 days. It gave us 4.5 million days. There we go. And we multiplied that by 1,000 years. So we had 4.5 million times 1,000 years. And that equaled 4.5 billion years. Now that was just the geo-age, for lack of. But you remember we just had this one square to fill, and that was really quite easy since you remember when at one time I reflected on there was a debate between 6 to 20,000 years, and the difference was 7. And so I took 7,000, and the difference between 7 and 6,000 was 1,000. So I began in increments of 250 years. So the first number we plugged in happened to be the number that worked quite perfectly, and we've ended up with approximately 12,500 years. So we landed between our parameter of 6 to 20,000 years. So that's how all that started. Setting it up was a little more difficult because that was the genius of our hermeneutics professor, Dr. John Penn. He just told us plug in all the numbers and the formula would fall in place. So we went back this direction, not to take a lot of time, but we took 4.5, multiplied it by days, 1,000 days. You remember 1,000 days is approximately 2.78 360-day year. That equaled 12.5 billion. And of course, this is the geo-age, not chronological age. Okay. And then remember that the question is how much was this, how much remained? So you remember in inversion, there's something called multiplicative inversion. Now this is from like 3rd grade arithmetic. So I'm not saying these things because they're complicated. It's just we didn't think back in elementary school we'd one day be using this again. So whatever we need to multiply 36 times the speed of light by to return to 1, that would tell us that here the first thing we need to do, let's say to bring this speed back, is just multiply it by 1 over 36c, and that equals 1. So this acceleration, this catapulsion that judged and, as we will, disintegrated all the fragments out there. Well, what was the remainder? Well, it's allegedly 1 billionth. That is, this entire universe is 1 billionth remainder of the original universe. So where would that originate? Well, let's go look and see what we find in Aleph. Remember, Aleph, the letter, the one letter, Aleph equals 1 and also 1,000. So this number is 80. This is 30. This is 1 equals 1, 1, 1. And we notice that 1 times 1 times 1 equals 1, because that was 1 to the 3rd powers. You remember Elohim means powers. Elohim. Let me go ahead and write that out since I brought it up. There we go. Elohim. Sorry, just sometimes I can't help but vowel point since I was trained. Well, remember, this also equals 1,000. Well, 1,000 times 1,000 or 1,000 is 1 billion. So there's our 1 billionth. So we're still not staggered. And what do we need to multiply it by? We multiply it by 1 billion. That is, 1 billion times 1 billion, that equals 1. So both in fragment and in speed, we decelerate by the same speed rate that we accelerated. We return to 1, and that is what they call an inert frictionless motion state. Now that's the original state of the first Earth. It was literally with motion that had no friction. There was motion, but it was frictionless. Let me write that more correctly. There we go. There. So thus far, our equation of everything's coming together quite well because we know that instantaneity, so let's write that down. Let's start with our theory. Instantaneity, materially equivalent to all might, as in almighty, minus power, equals total mass of the universe, minus catapulsion. And catapulsion was essentially, just a minute, I wrote some of this down, so I don't want to cheat, but I do want to make sure I'm not. Yeah. So catapulsion was according to, let me see here. Yeah, according to, so I'll just put a catapulsion at 1,000 years per 1 day. And that was essentially equivalent to that collision of matter over antimatter. Now, for every part antimatter, there's one more part matter. So that's why we had 1 billionth of the original Earth and universe, that is, in total, is the remainder because of this collision. And let me make sure I'm writing all that down. Yeah, that equaled, yeah, this here was approximately 36C, speed of light, matter. And that left us with the 1 billionth. But we found that 1 billionth all back here in our one word that is actually just the spelling of one letter, which is Aleph. Aleph. And then you notice we use our Chiasmus Inversion, which is what Peter used. 1 day is 1,000 years, 1,000 years is a day. And we see now the relationship, and we see how that works. So now we have a 1 billionth balance. That's of the first Earth. Now, before I go much further, remind you that just save your charts, your books. When I work on something, when we do something ourselves, it's not because there's not other great, wonderful things out there. And Larkin's charts, very old. I've never had a problem with all the work others have done. It's just this is work we're doing ourselves, using the language, the numeric values of it, and to see if that can help us as we notice here. There's something in our universe that brought us, and it's that inversion. If you notice, that's in the text. So we have this 1 billionth at the first Earth. Where's the first Earth matter? And that's where we receive that materially equivalent to 4.5 billion years decay for the Earth. Now that's for this remainder of the Earth. Yeah, there we go. And then also, I'll put the note in here. If this is 1 billionth the balance here, then we have 999,999,999 parts voided. So if you ever read Genesis 1:2 again and notice that when the form was removed, the intelligibility was lost and it became voided. You'll also notice when you study the atomic structure, the structure of matter, you'll notice that atoms are the smallest form while still retaining all the properties of an element, so that when you split, quote, the atom, it no longer retains all the properties of the original element, so it becomes something else. So the atom and the structure of matter is actually the cathedral of the universe. So let me move on before it slows down. And this this decayed Earth was essentially equivalent to, or the balance of the total mass of the universe of first Earth. There we go. Okay, so let's move on. Our equation's looking great. And then we had this here. What happened to this? It was see if I got this right. Yeah. It was annihilated at that matter, antimatter. There we go. That was a ratio. Now you can go read about this. Einstein and all the folks talk about it. Physicists talk about it. People that refute creationism according to the Bible have never studied the Bible. They've never used the languages. You have to remember, a lot of people have an aversion to the Bible being source material for anything, not knowing that calculus, physics, and chemistry were all products of theology, which was product of the Bible. And from physics, calculus, chemistry came pharmacology and technology. So all of this is built, and you can read about all that. We've talked about it before. Now we take this, here we go. Now let's just do this and then go insert our multiplicative inverse or inversion. That gives us 1 over 36c times that 36c. And that returns us back to 1. That would be the new Earth, that inert. So the new Earth will have an inert, frictionless motion as well. There we go. It will have motion, but without friction, plus the 1/billionth, and we'll multiply that by 1/billion. And of course, you can see that equals 1, and that puts all the parts that were voided, because all God has to do is what he did in the first place. He just removes one of the properties from any of all the elements, and it voids as many properties he needs to remove, voids 999,999,999 parts of the original universe. So now, I said all that to say that we have the new Earth. The new Earth equals first Earth as far as total mass of the universe. And in the conditioner state. You say, well, that was easy. I know it was very easy, actually, because we've done so much of this for so long that we really don't have a lot new to add. Because if you really looked up here, you notice we've already gone over this divine ratio so many times. We've already used Aleph, the letter, to show that these 3 ones equal 1 when we talk about Elohim, meaning powers. So we went 1 to the 3. We don't have 3 gods. We have 1 God. And we have the word Elohim, powers, plural, 1 God, 3 persons, 1 God, multiple powers, each one fully God, yet 1 God. And so we had this 1 times 1 times 1, that was known, but what we may not have remembered is what Dr. Penn recently guided us in our research, was to remember that Aleph is also 1,000. That gives us 1 over 1 billion without even consulting the textbook. And then when we remember our inversion, which came from our language, all we have to do then is just say, what do we multiply 1 billionth by to return to 1? What do we multiply 36 times the speed of light 1 over? That's how much it would have to be decelerated to return. So you notice we can have a theory of everything from the Bible. Now, I have no idea what this will do to your friends at the coffee shop who are in school and studying and laboring, but it would at least show that you have an appreciation and you can gain and ascertain from the Bible things that some people would think this is very complicated, but actually this is, we know about eternity. We know the Bible teaches Isaiah 48:3 instantaneity. We know also that the immutability of God, he changes not. So that when we had that, and let me just make sure I write that up there, the instantaneity was materially equivalent to this here. The all might, as in almighty, minus the power equal total mass universe. And time did not transpire, nor was energy, no depletion of any unit of energy. So there we go. We have the theory of everything. That's why I say the more you work on this and think it out, you can go from the first earth to the new earth. You can remember there's a regenerated earth. That's instantly. The new earth is instantly without time. So instantaneity. And the only thing we have here is the 6-day repair, which was deliberately done in time. You'll notice in Genesis 2, it speaks of in time, the in time creation. We have the in beginning instant creation. That's demarcated very clearly, Genesis 1:1. But you can be quite astute in your understanding of creation and in the relationships, apart from, unless you study science, unless you go into physics or calculus or chemistry or more rather all three of those. I'd recommend you do all three of those. But this was just if you were taking the Bible, using the numbers, and remembering the things that were described in the Bible. And all of this you can go to Lamp Theological Institute at baptistlamp.org, download these books that describe all this. This is some of the work that Dr. Penn's just now finalizing. This will be forthcoming here within the next 5 to 10 days. But really, you all have this. You all in this class could have built this just as efficiently as I just did. So have a blessed day and enjoy this lesson.